In my last video about guard pooling, someone in the comments rightfully pointed out that Judo has its own fair share of stupid rules. Today I'm going to talk about my second least favorite. I think you know what my actual least favorite Judo rule is, but that is a rant for another time, cough, leg band, cough. The rule I want to discuss here is how stand-up resets work in Judo and why I don't like it at all. Now, I do want to do a quick recap on my guard pulling video because some of my logic is going to be relevant to this one and because some people clearly missed the entire point. I do not have an issue with guard pulling. I have an issue with the top player being forced to engage a person on the ground per the rules. In essence, my argument is that if you want a certain position, you need to earn that position. The rules should not force an opponent to engage if he doesn't want to. So if you guard pool, the burden needs to be on the guard pooler to entangle the top position person. If top position can just walk away, then your guard pool and entanglement was a failed attack. The match needs to reset to standing unless the top person decides he wants to re-engage and do guard passing. It's not an unreasonable take, I don't think. If you want a position, it's up to you to make it happen, as opposed to waiting for the rules to do it for you. Now, I bring this up again because Judo has a rule that is kind of similar to BJJ's forced engagement rule. It goes something like this. If there is no progress on the ground, then the match is stood back up and reset. Now, I do like the underpinning ethos of this rule. It is my position that if you're going to do something on the ground, get it done quickly. I think a lot of BJJ folks think the no time limit formats are the best for demonstration of superiority, but personally, I think coming out and getting a submission in like 2 minutes is a way better showing of skill. So, on paper, I like that the Judo rule is trying to force constant progress. When this works, it does work well. A lot of commentary online seems to think that Judo ground game is just bad, and I think if you're only watching like men's division highlight clips, you'd probably be pretty confident in your opinion. But I'd encourage people to go watch women's division Judo too, because there is like 90% more ground game that happens over there. Something is always happening on the ground and the progress is well paced. The pins and submissions are really good. I really like how Newaza has panned out for the women's division. It gives it so much character in comparison to the male counterpart, and it's almost, not quite, but almost like watching a totally different sport. If you want a good place to start, I'd suggest hopping over to the YouTube channel Nonstop Newaza. You'll get a pretty good taste for it there. The problem, though, is that this rule can, and frequently does, get cheesed. In the men's division, more often times than not, it does at least. What ends up happening is someone will end up going to the ground, lie belly down, and just try to resist being turned over long enough for the referee to stand the match back up. This is dumb. Much like how BJJ rules force the top position to engage, this is a rule that gives the turtled player a desired outcome for doing almost nothing. They are not forcing any kind of progress. In fact, they are actively trying to stop progress from happening. It is not a good show of grappling. It isn't a good show of Judo. It isn't all that competitive. It's just stalling. Just like how I think the BJJ guard pooler should be forced to entangle the top player, the Judo player on the ground in this particular case needs to face the burden of standing back up on his own if he wants that position. If you want a reset, you should have to earn it. You can already leg grab on the ground in Judo, even by today's rules. Obviously, I'm a proponent for leg grabbing coming back in general, but even if it doesn't, just have the person stop leg grabbing once he's on his feet again. Basically, what I'm advocating here is just wrestle up. Now, if the person on top wants the reset, and it's judo, so many players probably will, he can just let the person back to his feet. And of course, if the person on top does not want the reset, then he needs to force that person onto the ground and keep the match on the ground. There are a few caveats that I would make here, though. To be specific, I would pair this with a few other rules. Namely, if you end up in a guard position, let's just pick one arbitrarily, spider guard, for instance, then the non-standard gripping rules from the stand-up phase would apply. What this means is that you would have 3 to 5 seconds to actually hit a sweep and keep the match on the ground. Failure to do so would result in a penalty or a Shido. I think the biggest weakness of modern BJJ is that a huge percentage of the match can go by with very little or even zero progress. Not only do audiences not really like to see a Cold War, but it's not really that great of a way to train. I think in general we need to stop thinking about guard as a defensive position and instead be far more proactive in that position. We need to be more offensive. We need to be looking to progress the match. Everything needs to be geared towards mounting that progressive offensive. I'm not saying that there isn't a time to be tactically defensive, because of course there is. Just that purely defensive play is a fast track to training scars. Also, scoring a sweep out of guard in judo wouldn't award points in my theoretical rule set here, as it would count as being in newaza. Finally, I would say that if the top player can lift you above his waist as if to slam you, it is a reset to stand up. I'm not at all the first person to come up with that rule, but it's a decent acknowledgement that the damage was about to get poured on without actually having to concuss people. And that's it. I personally don't think these kinds of rules are all that unreasonable, and frankly, I think they are in the spirit of competition. The through line from the previous video to this one is that a competitor needs to earn positions that he wants to, without relying on the rules to impose an artificial situation or do it for him. Now, what we are doing is fundamentally not a fight, so some artificiality is just inevitable. Some of that is there for safety, consistency, and clarity of judgment, but I don't think the rules I talked about in this video or in the last one are that. Plus, I have to say that from a training perspective, I think people look kinda silly arguing against this. Like, imagine training BJJ. The rules change, so you're forced to entangle someone in your guard so they can't just walk away, and then you complain about it? Like, oh no, I have to get better at guard play? This is so unfair. A rule change that's only going to make me better at grappling? It's just awful. Same thing with judo, and if the stand-up rule was implemented or changed. Imagine people complaining about that. Oh gosh, I'm going to have to learn how to get into the position where all my strengths are by myself? I can't rely on gamifying the rules? This is such a bad rule change. I'm going to have to get better at grappling. Oh no! It's always kind of a good chuckle when people make these kinds of arguments, because these kinds of rules are only going to make you a better grappler that will overall be in better control of a match. And even beyond that, it will probably grow both sports a bit, because casual observers should get to see more action in shorter periods of time. There will be less breaks in the amount of movement and attacks. Athletes as well will just have to get better, because there will be less opportunities to take arbitrary rests in matches. People will have to get better cardio. They'll have to train their strength better. They'll have to be more athletic. And that's totally fine, because it's an athletic competition at the end of the day. Honestly, I don't really see any downsides in terms of training quality or sport health. Most of the arguments I see against these kinds of rules are either deflections or I don't like it because I don't like it, change bad. Now, if people do have well thought out reasons for why a top position player should be forced to engage someone who's pulled guard, and even though he's not entangled, I'd be happy to listen to it. Likewise, I'd be happy to listen to people who don't think that judo players should have to stand back up on their own. I just don't think there's a very good reason not to change the rules for these. There's more action, there's better training involved, because there's more burden on individual players and individual strategies. I don't know, man. Overall, I think it's just a better idea. It's a better format. It's not as lazy, and the rules don't get gamified, which is the big one. That's really all I have on this topic. I do want to talk a little bit more about rules and metagames in the near future. I feel almost obligated to whine about the judo leg grab ban now. I'm not sure I'll have a whole lot of new things to say on it that other people haven't already talked about, but I'm allowed to cry on my channel about the tyranny of the Olympic Committee. I might have a video in the works as well about what I value in a rule set in general, although I think my viewers might already be getting a vague idea of what I like to see, but it might be useful and fun just to lay it out bare. And then I do want to get into some metagames, history of metagames, just a bunch of stuff like that. Basically, I have a lot of plans, so like, sub, all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.